Subscribe to my YouTube channel for deeply emotional, romantic, and mature stories that echo through your heart. Don't forget to like, share, and comment to support meaningful storytelling. The rain had been falling for 3 days straight, that Sarah barely noticed. She stood at her office window on the 42nd floor, watching the city blur into watercolor streaks below. Her reflection stared back at her, a woman who had built walls so high that even she sometimes forgot what lay beyond them. "You're going to wear a hole in that carpet if you keep pacing," came a voice from behind her. Sarah didn't turn around. She didn't need to. She knew that voice better than her own heartbeat. And that was exactly the problem. "I wasn't pacing, David," she said, her fingers tracing patterns on the cold glass. "I was thinking about the Morrison account." She closed her eyes. If only it were that simple. Among other things, David Chun had been her business partner for 5 years, her best friend for 7, and the one person she promised herself she would never, ever fall for. He was everything she'd learned to avoid: charming without trying, brilliant without arrogance, and worst of all, completely unaware of the effect he had on her. "Sarah." His voice was closer now, and she could smell his cologne, something warm and woody that made her think of autumn evenings and possibilities she'd never allowed herself to consider. "Look at me." She turned, and there he was. David, with his impossibly dark eyes, and the way he looked at her, like she was the only person in the room. His hair was slightly mussed from running his hands through it, a habit she'd noticed he did when he was nervous or thinking too hard about something. "We need to talk about what happened last night," he said. Her heart stopped. Last night. The Christmas party. The mistletoe. The moment when everything changed and nothing would ever be the same again. "Nothing happened," she said, but her voice betrayed her. "Sarah." He stepped closer, and she could see the rain reflected in his eyes. "We kissed." The words hung in the air between them like a confession. She had spent the entire night telling herself it was nothing, just a silly tradition. Too much wine, the magic of the season. But looking at him now, she knew she was lying to herself. "It was just mistletoe," she whispered. "Was it?" The question was so gentle, so full of hope and fear, and everything she'd been trying to avoid for years. Sarah felt her carefully constructed. Walls began to crack. She had rules. She had always had rules. Never mix business with pleasure. Never let anyone get too close. Never, ever fall for your business partner. These rules had kept her safe, had built her empire, had protected her from the kind of heartbreak that had nearly destroyed her once before. David was looking at her like she was worth breaking every rule ever written. "I can't," she said, backing away from him. "We can't. You know why, do I?" He followed her, not aggressively, but with the patience of someone who had been waiting for this moment far longer than she realized. "Because I've been trying to figure out why for 5 years, Sarah. 5 years of watching you keep everyone at arm's length, including me. It's complicated. It's only complicated if we make it complicated." She laughed, but there was no humor in it. "David, we own a company together. We have employees, clients, responsibilities. What happens when—" She stopped herself. "When what?" "When it doesn't work out." The words came out in a rush, like she was afraid if she didn't say them quickly, she might not say them at all. "When you realize that I'm not what you thought I was, when the novelty wears off, when you meet someone younger, prettier, less complicated. What happens to our friendship then? What happens to our business?" David was quiet for a long moment, and Sarah thought maybe she had finally pushed him away. Maybe he would realize she was right, that some lines were meant to be left uncrossed. Instead, He did something that completely undid her. He smiled. You think I haven't thought about that? He asked. You think I haven't spent 5 years watching you, learning you, falling for you a little more each day? You think I don't know exactly who you are? You don't know. I know you take your coffee black because you think adding cream is a sign of weakness, but you keep vanilla creamer in your desk drawer for when you think no one's looking. I know you work late every Thursday because that's when your sister calls, and you can't bear to let her think you're not successful enough. I know you're afraid of thunderstorms, but you won't admit it. And I know you've been in love with me. Almost as long as I've been in love with you. Sarah's breath caught. David, I know you're scared, he continued, his voice soft but unwavering. I know someone hurt you before, badly enough that you built walls to keep everyone out. I know you think I'm going to leave, that I'm going to hurt you, that I'm going to prove that you were right to keep me at a distance. He took another step closer, and this time she didn't back away. But I also know that what we have is worth fighting for. I know that losing you would be the biggest mistake of my life. And I know that you feel the same way. Sarah felt tears she hadn't allowed herself to cry in years, threatening to spill over. How can you be so sure? Because last night, when we kissed, you didn't pull away. Not for a long time. And when you finally did, you looked at me like I was everything you'd ever wanted and everything you were afraid to want. The memory hit her like a physical blow. The party, the laughter, the way everyone had suddenly gone quiet when they found themselves standing beneath the mistletoe. She had been about to make a joke, to laugh it off, to do what she always did when things got too real. But then David had looked at her with those eyes, and she had forgotten every rule she'd ever made. The kiss had been gentle at first, hesitant, like he was asking permission. But when she had responded, when she had let herself forget about walls and rules and the 100 reasons why this was a terrible idea, it had become something else entirely. It had become a promise. I remember, she said quietly. Then you remember. How right it felt. She did. God help her, she did. For those few moments, she had felt like she was coming home to a place she hadn't even known she was looking for. But what if we're happy? David interrupted. What if we're better together than we ever were apart? What if we build something beautiful instead of destroying what we have? Sarah closed her eyes. She could feel herself standing on the edge of a cliff, and David was asking her to jump. Every instinct she had screamed at her to step back, to be safe, to protect herself. But when she opened her eyes and looked at him, she saw something that made her heart skip. She saw forever. I'm scared, she admitted. I know, he said. So I am. I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to be vulnerable. Then we'll learn together. He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away. When she didn't, he cupped her face in his hands, his thumbs gently brushing away tears she hadn't realized were falling. I'm not going anywhere, Sarah, he said. Not today, not tomorrow, not when things get hard. And not him. Him, Marcus. The man who had promised her the world and then left her broken and questioning everything she thought she knew about love. David had never asked about him, had never pushed, but somehow he knew. Somehow he understood. How do you always know the right thing to say? She asked. I don't, he said with a soft laugh. I'm terrified I'm going to mess this up. I'm terrified you're going to realize I'm not good enough for you. I'm terrified that I'm about to lose my best friend, because I couldn't keep my feelings to myself. David, but I'm more terrified of spending the rest of my life wondering what if. Sarah felt something inside her chest crack open like ice breaking up in spring. All the walls she'd built, all the rules she'd made, all the reasons she'd convinced herself to stay away from this man who had somehow become essential to her existence. None of it seemed to matter anymore. What are you saying? She whispered. I'm saying I love you, he said simply. I'm saying I've loved you for so long that I can't remember what it felt like before. I'm saying that I want to try this, really try, even if it's scary, even if it's complicated, even if it means risking everything. Sarah stared at him, this man who had just laid his heart bare for her, who had given her the power to destroy him with a single word. The smart thing would be to say no. The safe thing would be to go back to the way things were. But as she looked into his eyes, she realized something that changed everything. She didn't want to be smart anymore. She didn't want to be safe. She wanted to be brave. I love you too, she said, and the words felt like coming alive. David's smile was like sunrise after the longest night. Yeah, she said, laughing despite the tears. I love you, and I'm terrified, and I have no idea what we're doing. But I want to find out. Together? Together. He leaned down and kissed her then, and it was nothing like the kiss under the mistletoe. That kiss had been a question. This one was an answer. When they finally broke apart, both of them were breathing hard. So, David said, resting his forehead against hers. What now? Sarah looked around the office they'd built together, at the life they'd created as partners, at the uncertain but thrilling future stretching out before them. Now, she said, we figure it out as we go. Are you sure about this? Sarah thought about all the rules she was breaking, all the walls she was tearing down, all the ways this could go wrong. Then she thought about all the ways it could go right. I'm sure, she said. For the first time in my life, I'm absolutely sure. Outside, the rain continued to fall, washing the city clean. But inside, Sarah felt like she was seeing the world in color for the first time. She had spent so long protecting herself from love that she had forgotten what it felt like to be truly alive. David kissed her again, soft and sweet and full of promise. I have one condition, Sarah said when they separated. Anything. We take this slow. We don't rush into anything. We figure out how to be us before we worry about what everyone else thinks. Deal, David said immediately. I've waited 5 years for you, Sarah. I can wait a little longer to do this right. And if it doesn't work out, it will. But if it doesn't, then we'll figure that out too, he said. But I'm not going into this expecting to fail. I'm going into this expecting to love you for the rest of my life. The rest of my life. The words should have terrified her. Instead, they filled her with a warmth she hadn't felt in years. Okay, she said. Okay, she repeated, and this time she was smiling. Let's do this. David spun her around, both of them laughing like teenagers. When he set her down, he was looking at her like she was the most beautiful thing he'd ever seen. I love you, he said again, like he was testing out the words. I love you too, she replied, and it was easier the second time. They stood there in the rain-soaked light of her office, holding each other, and Sarah realized that sometimes the scariest thing you could do was also the most right. She had crossed a line she'd sworn she'd never cross. But maybe, just maybe, that line had been leading her home all along. The rain outside began to slow, and through the clouds, Sarah caught a glimpse of sunshine. It felt like a promise.